us. My name is Dee. I'm on the partnerships team here at Mysten Labs. Before we start, I want to do a quick survey with our crowd. How many of you, raise your hand, how many of you are thinking about launching a token? All right, so we have some folks. How many of you have already launched a token? All right, and how many of you don't think that it's necessary to launch a token for your game? Okay, we have one. Alrighty. Well, I hope that today's panel is interesting to you guys. We have great company representing different POVs. So without further ado, I will get started. Let's do a quick round of intro, guys. Maybe start with Roger from Farcana.
Yeah, how you guys doing? My name is Roger. I'm doing marketing strategy over at Farcana, specifically with creators and influencers. My background is in esports. I've been working in gaming for 10 years now. Got to work with Mark Cuban and Dallas Mavericks to launch the NBA 2K League Season 1 and had the opportunity to help launch Season 1 of the Overwatch League with Comcast Universal. So brief, long history inside of esports specifically. Been inside of Web3 for the last 4 years now, specifically NFTs and gaming, and a little bit of tokens the last year with some of my clients, specifically Farcana. So excited to dive deeper about tokens, and if games need tokens, I have a lot of opinions there, so we'll definitely dive into it.
Awesome. Go ahead, Johnson.
All right, my name is Johnson. I'm the founder and CEO for Ambrus Studio. My past life was in Riot Games. I was Riot Games Asia CEO, but I started as the head of esports for League of Legends. And you know what? League of Legends esports was China's largest sport. So we were truly able to create a unicorn and make something very small truly mainstream. And I'm trying to do the same with Web3 by having free-to-play gaming come to Web3 by doing our game marquee title, E4C Final Salvation. Be the bridge between Web2 to Web3 and make Web3 mainstream. That's my goal.
Awesome. Alex.
Hi, everyone. I'm Alex, one of our managing directors at Republic. I lead our research and mechanism design, which provides all types of services for projects all throughout the space, both infrastructure and gaming. Have worked on about 95 projects in my last 7 years, and about 12 of them have reached billion-dollar FDVs or above. Yeah, we run a full stack services, regulated financial services business under Republic, everything from tokenization to Launchpad to node running, exchanges, and more. So, and thank you so much for the SWE team and my awesome BD team for putting this together. Awesome.
All right, the first question I want to dive in is probably a lot of people's questions, and this will be a question for Roger and Johnson on the gaming side. So why do you need a token as a gaming developer?
Well, I think there's a lot of different takes here, but my opinion is that every game pretty much already has a token, right? If you look at Fortnite, they have V-Bucks. That is pretty much a token. It's their economy. It's how you're able to purchase skins in their game. The only difference is, yeah, you can't go and sell those V-Bucks back to earn, yield back and get a profit. So Counter-Strike has this implemented right now with skins, right? They have their off-market skin market where you get skins in their game. You could go resell it on the market and earn actual cash and, and do that as well. So these things exist in games. So I think people keep comparing Web3 to Web2, and the reality is we're in gaming. Gaming is one, right? Yes, there is a blockchain component to Web3 gaming, but that component at some point, if it's 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, is going to be implemented in every video game, right? So everyone's doing that. When you go purchase a skin in a Riot game, Valorant, you got to buy their points. You got to, same with Ubisoft, right? So in some ways, every game has tokens already. So my opinion is it's already happening. The issue is that when you launch a token, it's like making a company public as a business, right? There's a lot of sell pressure, buy pressure. It's finding the balance of having to keep that. And right now, if V-Bucks went public and you could go sell and crash the market, Fortnite may collapse, right? So, it's finding that balance. So like I said, in my opinion, it already exists. Every game already has a token in some sense. It's figuring out the economics about it and to make it sustainable. And that's the biggest issue right now. I don't think we've seen any token be real sustainable to the point where a game is successful because of it, right? So I think it's finding that. So yeah, that's my take.
So was you guys so Farcana, your token is out now. Was the what's the main reason for the token to be live? For like to bring utility to your users, or what is the core kind of rationale behind it?
Yeah, the whole idea behind the token is to be the economy of the whole ecosystem. So if it's buying, purchasing inside of the game, if it's purchasing outside the game, the FAR token essentially is to be the ecosystem of the Farcana world, not just the game, but the world as a whole, the marketplace, the other games that the Farcana studio is creating now, Dizzer. So, for us, it's creating an ecosystem, and FAR is just one part of that. And releasing it prior to a game, I think it's in some ways, and I'll speak, from our CEO standpoint, it's part of the ecosystem. If you launch a game in Web3 gaming, there has to be a token. It's expected. So in some ways, it's not necessarily of why did we do it because we kind of had to in some ways, but it is our ecosystem. So we released a token based off that, revolving around our whole ecosystem, the power of our games, not just for Farcana, but for our games for the next 5 to 10, 15 years.
Johnson, how about you?
All right. I very much agree with what Roger said. To me, you can or cannot, but you don't have to launch a token. It's about what additional utility the token can bring to its users. There are some pluses, but there will be minuses, right? There will be more regulations, there will be more downside, more selling pressure. It's all about what you want. So for us, we launched our game and our token around the same time. But our game actually doesn't have a lot of utility given by the token. So ended up being two pretty detached systems. And now with our second game, we're actually trying to combine them and leverage the token as a way to do multi-level marketing referral to lower our customer acquisition costs, which we think is a very viable play. Why is that? It's because Web3 provides early IPO access, where traditionally your token cannot be traded. You have to use cash to acquire users. Now there's real ownership and sense of community, and you can have a tradable currency that you can potentially acquire users at an even cheaper rate and leverages virality and leverages community. And I think that can be very, very powerful if we can get it to work. So bottom line is there's many, many ways a token can be useful, but I think for it to be sustainable, it needs to be replacing something that has a originally higher monetary value. For us, it's customer acquisition dollars. So that's how we plan to use the tokens. And if you can figure out something like this where token can be truly useful for players or developers, that's when you need to launch tokens.
I see that Alex wants to say something. Go ahead.
I would say that I would rather start to approach this conversation with a bit more structure in mind. Cryptocurrencies are housed under this broader umbrella of digital currencies, right? But when we talk about token, it's this very ambiguous term for which you can assign a lot of interpretations as to what it means. But I think if we want to have a productive conversation, we need to have more strict definitions. I think in the sense, why are we in this room? Why does this industry exist? It's propped up on positive speculation. So I want to offer a very narrow definition with wide-ranging implications. Positive speculation is what grows this industry. However, positive speculation is not derived from one particular source. It has a variety of sources that it can come from. And the most robust tokens, I would argue, come from having mastered, whether organically or more centrally planned, what I'd call pluralist mixture of these paths towards positive speculation. That can be things like scarcity for an asset that wants to be used in the future. Bitcoin and Bitcoin and Ethereum are our sort of god tier use cases in this sense. Number two is the sense of a cultural asset or a meme asset, right? To put it in a bit more sort of 2024 terms. And things like utility are absolutely crucial in some models. But I would say, whatever you guys come up with, and for those that are trying to find tokens, ask yourself first, is there anything that I'm building that will be worth speculating on, and why? That is where I would narrow the definition for what this topic is particularly about. In-game currencies will always exist, and there's not really an argument as to whether we need them or not. The question is, do we enter speculative markets, and with what? IP, an in-game resource, a studio or ecosystem-wide play? These are all different paths towards a narration of positive speculation. And so that's the sort of structure I propose for everyone to think about and also for this conversation.
This brings me to my next question to you, Alex. So from a researcher's perspective, what are some successful cases that you have seen in the past few months?
Past few months?
Or whatever you...
You have to give me a few years. So, let's look at what we define as success, again, in this industry. If you want to define success as a game whose market capitalization, whether that's measured in equity or in their token, has been drastically or fundamentally improved with the use of a token, too tall of an order. Not yet. I'm very optimistic for it, but maybe a separate conversation. In terms of assets which have captured attention and that positive speculation I've mentioned, and even for a short amount of time, because we all know, some of these astronomical prices, even for things like Tesla in the traditional stock market, can become artificially inflated as well. But to the benefit and in a sort of fun zero-sum game for everyone to play. In that sense, we can look towards some of the first games in this space. CryptoKitties, Axie Infinity. We wrote the economics paper for Star Atlas. And again, all of these, despite your opinions on how good of a game it was, or how much you thought they overspent in trailers for the games versus the actual gameplay, they all succeeded in getting positive speculation. They all succeeded in creating a narrative that people were putting their money towards. Now, sustainability is a completely separate question. I think, honestly, we're not ripe enough of an industry to even talk about sustainability yet, because we do not have more of a structured understanding of what these tokens actually do for our business, or rather, what these businesses can offer to those audiences. So I think when we look at those past use cases, I have to admit, not many are long-lasting titles that will last generations. But you can say that about most of the games that are being launched here in the traditional sense too. Even the traditional world, Elden Ring or Monster Hunter Wilds, the more recent one. How long will they sustain the amount of playership they have before it inevitably goes under this sort of quasi-geometric distribution downward, and then where users just rotate from one title to the other? If you were to even take these most successful games and launch tokens for them, think about what the token performance would do as a result, and then even if you assume that token does not affect the business, tell me how many single titles would have had successful tokens as a result of this. And my answer and my prediction, if we were to run that thought simulation, is very few. Dota 2, Super Smash Bros. Melee might have cult followings with limited liquidity, but incredibly high retention and belief from that community. And yet, I wouldn't necessarily regard them I wouldn't necessarily see them as multi-billion-dollar projects. So that's some thoughts.
Yeah, just to touch on that a little bit more, I want to also hear from Johnson and Roger on what role do you think that your token, for example, have played in fostering community engagement within your ecosystem?
Yeah, I mean, from our end, I think community is what saved the token, right? Prior to me actually joining Farcana, they hired a previous agency to launch a token, and they saw some negativity from it. And when they hired me to come on, my goal was to bring on creators and influencers to build community, to start building educate about the token, because prior to that, I was just launching, a token, going live and doing the traditional agency marketing route, right? When I came in and said, we need to build community, right? Something I focus on with my own brand, Wayfinders, with my co-founder, Spike Collects, who's a content creator in the space. It's building community, and the way you do that is fostering real engagement, live events, real creator event, bringing real value, right? That's the biggest thing, is value. We could incentivize and create, different types of questing things, but that only goes so far when it comes to retention, right? To retain people, you have to consistently show up, and it's taking us almost a year now to bring the token back to where it, at least somewhat, scalable, right? And that came through 8 to 9 months of continuously building with content creators, influencers, community, gamers, people that are passionate about gaming and wanting to compete. And so for us, it's really been focused on community, right? And that's our biggest thing, especially when we don't have a game that's fully released, right? Our game is still in development. We have a staff of 150 plus. We just moved to Abu Dhabi and did a partnership with the government over there with the esports island that they're building. So for us, it's like, while we're still developing, we need to be building the community side. So, the last, 10 months, 11 months now, prior to the launch of the token, we've been focused on really honing on and working with creators, community members, gamers, and bringing them together. We have, people from the Blizzard and the Overwatch League, pro players that are playing our game on privately that we don't even mention about because we're really focusing on the gamer aspect of our game and, publicly to continue the token and bring value to that. It's us building the community side.
Johnson, what about you? What do you think that your token E4C has played, what type of a role in terms of engaging with your audience?
So I think it's a tool to engage with your community, and it's a sign of people are aligned with you in the long run. It's essentially, instead of giving people monetary rewards, which doesn't appreciate, which is just a one-time thing, they're just going to spend it on something else. You give them sometimes locked tokens, which aligns incentive for the long run. And then, of course, if it's unlocked, then a lot of people are going to sell. But yes, 95% of them sell, but you still get 5% of them as continued users, who is part of your engagement, part of your community champions, who's going to keep spreading the word for you. So to me, that's why I continue to say that token for us is a way of engaging with our audience, building a community, and replacing customer acquisition costs. And token, of course, can also be super helpful in creating economy by itself in many other ways. But today, I just want to focus on our main use case, which is acquiring users. We think it's a super good way to acquire users at cheaper cost, leveraging virality.
I would love to ask you a follow-up question on that, though. How is it reducing your customer acquisition cost if in the best case scenario? Tell me about how that token, as it goes through its price action, would potentially help your customer acquisition cost.
So for example, a company with no revenue, which is our game just launched, we actually normally wouldn't have a market price, right? So Web3 values us at a certain price, which is probably already above any price that IPO market, let's say Nasdaq, will offer us. As a result, then we can use tokens for our user acquisition. And then, yes, 90% of the people, and then I mentioned that we have a multi-level marketing referral program for people who purchase our game. And we just build it into our customer acquisition cost. Majority of the people will actually just sell that token, but there will be a portion of them who actually think, hey, because I am part of this community, I'm bringing my friends to play in this game, and the friends they bring in can bring me even more revenue. So they became part of our community champions. For majority of them, it's a one-time transaction that essentially is the same, except that token prices is valued at a slight premium versus IPO price. But the long-term stickiness effect of a token for those 5% who stays is different than pure cash. And so that's how we plan to leverage it.
Alex, I do have a follow-up question for you. This is something that you touched on earlier about utility and the tokenomics, so on and so forth. So when we talk about adding utility to a token, does that mean that instead of one in-game economy, now I have to think about this outside complexity that I'm introducing into my game? What, from your POV, from your research standpoint, what are some interesting and successful cases merging the token with the in-game economy that you have seen?
The one main, I would say, existential reason why cryptocurrencies were created it was so that in the absence of cash, much like Johnson is saying, that you could provide a sort of subsidy for those who are contributing to some type of, well, in the more traditional sense, work. In the game sense, it's attention, engagement, things of this sort. And so the successful cases of this, I would, and again, successes can be defined in many ways. But for, say, Axie Infinity, what was it, right? There was a farming mechanism that you can, in an abstract sense, analogize it to like doing work with an ASIC on Bitcoin. It's a far reach, but in the sense, what it is allowing for all of these different people to engage in some type of work. I would think of it as labor, even if it's gamified. And in this case, that labor was then used to create intellectual property, which was then sold to an international audience at premiums. This was, in my view, a perfectly sensible business model. I won't talk about their two-token system and things of that sort, but in terms of the core game economy loop, it was a very simple production and sale situation. And so I think in that sense, and the same that we did with Star Atlas, right? Well, it was a different game, a sort of a gold rush game, where again, you go and you find resources, you upgrade and you resell ships, right? And the same idea is, it mimics a business in that sense. But that token is what is used to bootstrap that base. What I would encourage all founders to be careful of is the amount of additional work you have to do just in order to make that successful. When you bring in a token in speculation, especially early on, you have to ask, who are you attracting? There's a reason why health insurance, when provided to anything from a company to a whole nation, brings about those who need it the most or in the most desperate positions. When you offer speculation, you have to know who are you actually bringing to your platform first. And this is not something that you should necessarily always do on day one. And also I would like to offer this. There is I wouldn't call it a cryptocurrency, but one of Final Fantasy XIV's crystals, spelled with a K or something like that. But the point is, it existed as a cross-platform token or asset that you can use between Final Fantasy 11 and 14. Someone can check me on the numbers on which exact parts of the franchise it is. But it has existed above the layer of the title. And how well is it doing? I don't know, because it's not a cryptocurrency. But it does exist there, and there is a price for it. And it's whether that or like Linden Labs' own Linden, all of the liquidity is and the trading is done via essentially a licensed money transmitter, right? Or money transmitter license. And so to shortly answer your question, though, in the absence of this cash, it is good to have a token. However, on a single title, you have no way of telling whether that's the title that's going to have product market fit. Let's take one of the biggest money-making studios out there, besides Riot, like MiHoYo, right? MiHoYo, how many titles, if you look up, did they take before they reached product market fit with a Genshin Impact, right? With an open world concept, things of this sort. Maybe Honkai Star Rail did decently. But it took them over half a decade to find that product market fit. If they had launched that token in Title 1 or Title 2, they would have flopped. And what would have that done to their business? And how would that have inhibited them in their path to eventually finding Genshin Impact? Just like with traditional startups, you pivot a handful of times before you find what's actually makes money. I caution for anyone making games that you do not rely on a token to bootstrap your business. And when you do have something that's worth speculating on and something that's going to actually be a cash cow, then you can do everything. You have all the tools to make a token much more successful than bumping around in the dark.
One last question for all of you. Is launching a token still a viable way to raise funds today?
What was that?
Is launching a token still a viable way to raise funds today?
I mean, my opinion is that it's still a way people do it till this day. There's someone right now launching a token as we speak to raise funds. So it is still a viable way. Is it the right way? I'm not sure with the current market fit, but it is a way people are still raising till this day. So if someone's launching a token, most of the time a small percentage or a big percentage is because they're raising funds for the project. In some ways, it's malicious because some people are doing it with, like, they know that if this doesn't work out, they're done. And I don't think that's right. I think that if you're raising because you're trying to cover certain areas of your business, but you're continuing to have the run rate to continue operating as a business, it's fine. But if that is your only way to operate as a business, then I think you're putting your investors in a bad place.
Yep.
Like 20-second answers.
Yeah, sorry.
My simple answer is no. If you need to use a token launch to get money to fund your business, it's very likely to fail. I think the launching token is a rich man's game. And so, make sure that you focus on generating revenue to sustain your business, not launching tokens.
Alex?
We're going into a casino world, make money off of how you will with that information before we do more world building. And then 2, yes, you can raise on a token. Your investors just have to be willing to wait it out with you.
Yep, and the last thing too is at the end of the day, you got to understand that you're like he said, timing is everything. Meme coins were a thing recently, and anyone could have got rich off $1. That's a timing thing. You can't do that now, right? It's very hard. So it's the same thing with raising money in games. It's all about timing, the time you're doing it, the market, and also just being honest with your investors.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. Thank you all so much for joining us today.